The recording in progress. Perfect. Abba Namaste, everyone. Christian Long, life enhancement consultant, giving you a big and beautiful shout out on this inner transformation Q&A Thursday. Before we begin, let us invoke. Place your hands on your heart. Connect to the warmth within the heart, the sweetness within the heart, the soft, soothing, flowing energies within the heart. Feel it expanding throughout your whole being. And be aware of the crown. Be aware of the sparkling rainbow energies pouring down into the crown. And be aware of the heart and the crown together. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, respected and beloved teacher, Grandmaster Cho Koksui, to his teacher, Lord Bodhisattva Meiling, to Lord Buddha Kuan Yin, to Sarasvati, to Lord Ganesh, the remover of ignorance, to Holy Master Count Saint Germain, to all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, healing ministers, to our divine selves or higher souls. We humbly invoke for your divine light, love, and power, for your divine help, guidance, and protection, for your greater awareness, understanding, and inner transformation on all levels. We thank you, Lord God. We thank you all. With tremendous gratitude, respect, and love, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you. In full faith, so be it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone. We're finally caught up with the Q&As, and we have we're going to be doing this Q&A earlier because I have an obligation to attend to that's time sensitive. This is not necessarily time sensitive as long as we can fit it in for the day that we're scheduled to do the transformation Q&A Thursdays. So there was something on my mind that I thought would be beneficial for the group, but it went in one side of my aura and apparently fluffed out through the back end of my aura because I can't think of what it is right now, but I'm sure it'll come to me if it's important and it needs to be said. Okay, so going into the first question, if you get to a place where you feel very comfortable and at peace and content with your life and the direction you are going, how do you relate to others without coming across arrogant or full of yourself? I'm involved with a Bible study class with my church, and they are constantly asking questions about things I've already dealt with and feel at peace with. I feel awkward speaking up to the fact that I'm okay with that part of my life. I already do that. I don't have a problem with that, etc. I don't want to sound conceited or fake, but at the same time, I feel like if I don't speak up and let them know, they can get to the point that I'm not doing my part to help and share. I guess the ultimate question is, how do you share when you're at where you are at and how to get there without coming across the wrong way? This is a really good question dealing with social dynamics of how we interact with one another as people. There is a book that I highly recommend reading, practicing, rereading, and practicing some more. It's called Nonviolent Communication. Nonviolent communication. So how do we sound not fake and not conceited when we share our life and our inner experiences or outer experiences? Well, as one of the master pranic healers says, perception is reality, right? So the more we talk, the more we share, the more we open ourselves up, that tends to add to people's ammunition for criticism, judgment, even misunderstandings, right? The more information you give somebody, the more the more things they have to process and deal with and can distort. So that's why one of the principles of the Sphinx, right, which is a holy master we talked about earlier, is the fourth principle, to remain silent, right? We remain silent about our inner experiences that we have in our meditation, in the inner world throughout the day, certain initiations that we've received, etc., maybe abilities that are developing. We do our best to remain silent about them, right? Because we're cultivating them. We don't want them to be influenced by other people or other circumstances. We don't want our negative pride to kick in. Then we're also silent about our outer experiences, because if we share outer experiences, I just got a promotion, this is going well, that is going well, people have a tendency to judge because of jealousy, because of enviousness, because they don't feel good enough. So instead of edifying and complimenting you, they de-edify you and critique you and criticize you to bring you down to their level, right? So in these cases, it's there's a term that Master Ko talked a lot about in teacher training, which is from a book called what is it called? I can't think of it. I can see the title, but I can't see the words in the title. But in essence, it's about reading the room, right? So reading the room requires what? Awareness, requires us to get outside of our heads, requires us to observe other people. So if you're in a setting that you're like, okay, people are sharing their experiences, those aren't my experiences anymore, or people are sharing their challenges, those aren't my challenges anymore. What we can do is go deeper into the understanding as to why that has possibly happened. Like, let's say you hear about somebody sharing in a group about the relationship problems they have with their spouse or their partner. And you're like, man, I had those relationship challenges 10 years ago. I overcame them 5 years ago, and it's been smooth sailing ever since. So it gives you a place of compassion, right, for their suffering, because you're like, I've been there, I've done that, I've overcome, I've moved on with my life. So this is where all the great spiritual teachers start coming from at a certain point in their development. They've been there, done that many, many times. They've overcome, they've mastered, and now they do what? They come back to serve, they come back to teach, they come back to enlighten the less enlightened people. The analogy we give is if you've gone through college, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year, you've had your ups and downs, you've had your trials, your tests, your tribulations, and you made it. You got the diploma. You got to throw your hat into the air. Congratulations, you made it. Then you become a what? Alumni or alumnus of that school, right? So just like we have physical schools in the physical world, we have inner schools in the inner world, that we can specialize in a certain school, and then we help certain souls with certain challenges related to that specialization, right? So the alumni will come back and they'll come to banquets, they'll come to service projects, they'll hire some of the freshmen or sophomore or juniors to work at their companies as interns, right, to kind of give them a leg up. So you help out the people that are going through what you've already gone through, right? So just because we have quote unquote mastered a certain subject doesn't mean that we have to come from negative pride of going, sucks to be you, I've already mastered this, let me move on. Once you've reached a certain level of mastery within your peer group, you go from a co-struggling person to a teacher. But this is where it gets challenging, is that if people still consider you their peer, the likelihood of them listening to you is much, much less. Right? So we've talked about this before when it comes to intimate relationships, and this can also apply to our personal and professional relationships, is that you bless the people, you heal the people, and you be an example for people, right? So if you've mastered healthy relationships, then you bless the person with healthy relationships, You heal the person of dysfunctional, unhealthy relationship energies within their life, and then you continue to be a good example, right? People follow example. If you have a strong throat chakra, I guess people will follow what you speak and not what you do, which I've always found fascinating. I always want to know the backdoor workings of somebody, right? It's like, as Master Cho would say, anyone can say anything, anyone can write anything, but what's the track record of their success, right? So be an example for people. And if people want to judge you, if they want to criticize you, if they want to be envious or jealous of, your success, that's okay. That's entirely up to them. It's on their shoulders. So you have to practice awareness of where they're at, and you have to practice discernment of how much can I share? How much are they open and receptive to what I'm sharing? Because here's the thing. And I've always been fascinated with this social dynamic that I think I learned early on as a teenager of what I can share and what I couldn't share. Like, I was able to read people of that this person's not going to be open and receptive, but because at that time in my life, because I had a lot of negative pride and I had a lot of low self-esteem, I intentionally want to get into conflict with other people, right? So I knew bringing up X, Y, and Z would trigger the person, would cause the person irritability, frustration. It would reveal some of their weaknesses, and then I could point out those weaknesses. Aha, see, you're not very patient. You were talking a good game about being patient, but look, you're not very patient. And I just proved to you that you're not very patient. Now let's work on your patience, right? How open and receptive are they going to be? So I realized at a young age where people were, and that requires awareness, it requires observation, it requires a level of objectivity. So if you're with people in a group setting or a one-on-one setting, the less you say, the better. And if you have to say something, ask questions. That is the thing that people very rarely ever do. They make assumptions, they make statements, they give unsolicited advice, right? Versus be still, be aware, be quiet, right? The fourth principle of the Sphinx, remain silent. And then if you have to talk, ask questions, seek to understand. So there's a sales tactic, which I found extraordinarily successful. I noticed a few of the masters use it. And I think one of them was actually trained in this particular sales tactic. So there's a sales training company called Sandler Sales Institute. They've been around for 30 plus years. And one of the premise of their the main premise of their selling strategy is asking questions. And I'm simplifying and I'm kind of diluting a little bit of their teachings, but I'm using it to make a point. It's acting dumb, right? Because most people, when they meet a salesperson, they have their guard up. Like, I know this person's going to try to sell me something I don't want at a price that I'm unable to pay, right? So they have their guard up. The Sandler Institute basically makes you more of a consultant versus someone that's trying to sell something, and B, it makes you like come across as a person who doesn't really know what they're talking about. Because someone who knows what they're talking about, yes, that can instill confidence, but also there's that arrogance, right, that we're kind of talking about in today's question. So if you come across as arrogant, people shut down. If you come across as arrogant, people have their defenses up, right? But if you come across as just the good old boy who's an idiot, people are like, you know what, out of compassion and out of sympathy and out of me wanting to appear intelligent and me wanting to appear as the all-knowing person, I'm going to listen to them, hear them out, and then critique them along the way. So guilty as charged, that was never my strategy before I learned about the Sandler process. But when I got into sales, and this was with Marriott, I used to sell for Marriott, the hotel chain. And I realized when you play dumb, when you play a person who is scatterbrained, a little bit all over the map, not so confident. People have a tendency to hear you out, and they have a tendency to, for lack of a better way of saying, come to your rescue. And I've noticed certain pranic healing masters at times will play that. They'll play it off like they don't know what they're talking about, or they're oblivious to something, right? Because it's making the other person receptive. Because if you come across as arrogant or know it all, you're either A, going to shut down, or B, you're going to put your walls up, right? Because you're protecting yourself from being taken advantage of, whatever, right? So that's a strategy that has served me extraordinarily well over the past 15 or so years, right? I'm very confident and competent at what I do. I don't know it all. I don't have all the answers. I don't claim to have all the answers, right? Sometimes you guys will submit questions and I'll be like, either A, I'll be like, I don't know, or I have to go back to that question later on and then bring it up in a following Q&A so I can answer it somewhat coherently. And because of that, I hope you guys are more open and receptive versus Christian's the know-it-all. He has all the answers and he's never wrong. Not true at all. But at the same time, I'm going to downplay some of my knowledge and expertise, because think about it. I've been doing this work for 18 years. I've done thousands of healings. I've done 55 plus retreats. I've spent thousands and thousands of hours working on myself, going to the far corners of my consciousness to become a better person, to become a greater instrument of goodwill, to overcome my previous incarnations and the challenges I came in with this incarnation. And if people, just giving you this within context, if people knew what I knew of all the years of experience, 20 plus classes in pranic healing, being around the masters for a prolonged period of time, if people knew what I knew and knew how I could help them, they would be much less resistant to doing what has to be done, right? And I don't say that from pride. I'm saying that to illustrate a point. But if I came across each person or each group of like, hey, I'm a super duper expert, you better listen to me. And if you listen to me, your life will improve. If you don't listen to me, your life will fall apart, right? How receptive is someone going to be? Likewise, a few of the masters in pranic healing, when they do group coaching or group meditation classes or inner study classes, if you really knew how much they knew, it would blow your mind. Like literally, like I've studied the masters for 18 years, and their breadth and depth of experience and wisdom and knowing is mind-boggling to me, right? One of the masters is a genius that I can validate. The other masters that I'm thinking of would be probably at that level, right? But you don't hear them saying, look at how advanced I am over you, right? So we go back to the example of the question. We're sitting in a small group, Bible study, Buddhist sutra studies, Hindu studies, and you hear somebody sharing their struggles, their trials, their tribulations, and you're like, that's such kindergarten stuff. When are we going to move on to the big and meaty things? So what's happening is it's an indicator to keep your humility, right? Knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses. B, it's an indicator to go deeper into what that person is saying, so you have better understanding deeper into that subject, and then the other factors, right? Because remember, we talk about healing is multi-factored and multi-causal. So it's an opportunity for you to practice deeper understanding. And then C, an opportunity to, this is my opinion, playing dumb a little bit, right? So remaining silent and or asking questions like, well, what do you mean by that? Can you clarify? Can you explain that a little bit more? And if you guys have been paying attention and continue to pay attention with the inner transformation group or with live streams that we've done in the past on Facebook, and we will start doing again. Watch how I interact with people, right? Years ago, I wouldn't have taken the approach of playing dumb because I had low self-esteem. So I wanted to prove to everyone how much I knew, how wise I was, my experiences, whatever, right? Now it's different because I realize, well, is my goal to help that person's life transform, or is my goal to help that person realize how developed I am? Right? So this goes back to the person asking the question. You need to humble yourself and recognize, right? There's a tendency for you to be thinking like they're envious of me, they think I'm faking, they think this, that, and the other. It's like, well, that's their perception and that's their level of truth that they're at. It's not the higher truth, or it's not the reality of the situation. And so when you interact with them and exchange with them, is your goal to help them transform, or is your goal to avoid being criticized or to demonstrate how wise you are or developed you are or whatever, right? Because I knew someone very close to me that the exchanges that this person had with other people was never about the other person having the transformation. It was always about that person being seen as the expert, being seen as the more knowledgeable person. Because I would say, well, what's the feedback that you've gotten from these people that you interact with? Right? You have more knowledge, more experience than them, and then you share that knowledge and experience with them. What's the feedback that you get? And he goes, well, they always shut down, or they don't return my text messages, or I never hear from them again. I go, so then was your strategy in transforming them effective? No. So then what's a better way of doing it? You need to humble yourself. You need to meet the person where they're at. You need to, quote unquote, play dumb a little bit, right? So the wall comes down, so they open up and they feel comfortable sharing and exchanging with you. And then you're an example of that thing that you're sharing with them, right? You're a millionaire, so you're an example of prosperity, for instance. You have a loving marriage, so you're an example of healthy relationship dynamics. You are super fit, super healthy, so you're an example of, being fit and healthy, right? You're an example of that. So if you're an example of that, people see the example and they will naturally go to you for guidance and for help, right? One of my abilities is communication, right? Am I the best communicator all the time? Of course not. Do I know how to communicate to get people to a certain conclusion or understanding? Yeah, I would consider myself to be an expert in that world, but I've also spent 25 years trying to become good at it, right? So if they see you as an example, they're going to be more open and receptive. But if you're yelling at them of, look how great I am, and I am a good example, then they're not going to be super open and receptive, right? It's like running around town going, I have so much inner peace and happiness and joy. But like, you come across as aggressive and sharp and irritable, so people aren't going to be buying it, right? That's why I always like to look at the example, the embodiment. How does that person show up? Never mind the facade, right? We have Instagram and then we have real life, right? That's the joke on Facebook and on Instagram. We have the Instagram glamour, and then we have the behind the scenes, or the reality of the person, of the person's lifestyle, of the person's, status or what have you. Does that make sense? So it's a really, really good question, and it's not so easy to just answer like it's this. Like, okay, you're one-on-one with someone and you don't want them to perceive you as full of yourself, arrogant, fake. Okay? Well, that's their perception. How can you help them with their perception? You remain quiet, you ask intelligent questions, you kind of play dumb a little bit. You guys get what I mean by playing dumb. And then you be an example. And that's how you will inspire people to transform. It's a really, really good question, but it's not super easy. I guess the ultimate question is, how do you share where you are at and how to get there without coming across in the wrong way? Also, there's the old saying that you don't throw pearls before swine, right? You don't throw priceless spiritual teachings before people who are uninitiated, people who are unintelligent, or people who are um, dominated by their lower tendencies, like greed, sexual lust, um, excessive need for power, right? So you, as the disciple, one who practices discipline, you have to have the awareness of what you can share and what you can't share. And that is a never ending checking in period. What can I share with these people? Listening, listening, listening. Okay, I can share not all of it. I can share this in this way. And that requires practice, awareness, and feedback, right? But if you're sensitive and you can see energy, it's a faster way of doing it. You're like, oh, I'm going to share this because this will be enough to feed their curiosity and offer a little bit of a nugget, a little bit of a window of light, a little bit of insight for them to move in that direction, right? Or you say nothing. But again, saying nothing does what? It gets people's curiosity piqued. They start going, so and so used to share all the time and now so and so doesn't open their mouth. What's going on? Right? So that's why many very, very advanced people have become masters at blending in with ordinary people. I guess I'm still not a master yet. Standing out like a sore thumb. Okay. Good question. Next question. What is your thought on free will? Free willy or free will? God gave us free will to make our own choices. I have often prayed and tried to do healing on certain people, family members, to help them find their way and be at peace. But I have recently realized that if they use their free will to choose not to make good choices or go down the wrong path, that is their choice, and there is nothing God or my positive input can do for them. Do you keep healing and cleansing with the hopes that they will eventually make the right choice, or is it wasted effort? Another great question that is not super easy to answer. So the great beings cannot take away your free will. Again, the great beings cannot take away your free will. So you have the divine spark, which is the first point of separation and individuality as a human soul. So if for this analogy, if God was a fire and there's a spark from that fire, that would be where we come in, right? Where there's no longer, or where there is a separation, a perceived separation, right? The divine spark. So the divine spark has its own will. Then it pours a portion of itself down into the higher soul, which has a form of its own will. Then it pours itself down into the incarnated soul, into the mental body, emotional body, etheric body, and physical body. So you have all these different wills that are at play. So you have the will of God, you have the will of the higher, the divine spark, the will of the higher soul, and the will of the bodies. So there's a lot of will going on. So the goal is to be in alignment with what? The will of God, right? That's the ultimate, that's the objective, to be in alignment with the will of God. So it's about removing the inner resistance to the will of the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and submitting those wills to the higher soul, and then the higher soul submitting its will to the divine spark, and then the divine spark submitting its will to the supreme God, or the Para Brahman. Now, when there is oneness of the incarnated soul and the higher soul, you have a saint, a senior saint or senior arhat, right? That's called soul or self-realization. Then when the higher soul is merged fully the divine spark, that's called God realization. So when Lord Jesus says, I and my Father are one, the divine spark is the Father. So when Lord Jesus says, I and my Father, I am, and the divine spark are one, that's God realization, right? So very few souls on this planet have achieved God realization. Lord Jesus, Lord Buddha, the great, great teachers being a few of them, right? So they guide the evolution of the cosmos and the evolution of humanity, among other great beings. As Master Cho Koksui would say, the work that these beings do are incomprehensible even to disciples. So even disciples, even one who are connected to the spiritual realm and who are on the path, cannot even comprehend what these great teachers and elders are doing. Makes sense, right? So we just have to take what's been given to us and what's been digested for us, and then regurgitate it to those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. So we have the free will to do anything and everything that we want, and we will suffer the consequences of that free will. So your higher soul always wants healing, but there may be a lesson tied to that person's ailment or condition that the healing will temporarily help or will drop the suffering connected to that healing. But in order for the healing to be permanent and profound, the person may have a lesson to learn, right? So let's say the person suffers from lots of anger, bitterness, resentment. You do healing, you do healing, you do healing. They can breathe. They have more inner peace. They have more stillness. But then something triggers them, they get upset, and then you do healing, and then they're back to where they started from, right? So what's the lesson? The lesson is forgiveness. So if they don't learn the lesson of forgiveness, all the healings you do or anyone else does will be temporary. What else? So you heal because it's the compassionate thing to do, right? And all healing is for the soul, right? So when you're doing healing, you're healing the soul, which that energy then flows down into the person's mental, emotional, etheric, and physical bodies, right? So when if somebody has lower back pain and you do sweeping on their lower back and you remove the congestion in the lower back, what then flows down is energy from the soul that contains light, love, and power. And then that influences the person to be more virtuous and to be less vice bound, which develops the soul. Does that make sense? Or did I lose everyone? Okay. So that's how it works. So you can do healing as a form of service and be non-attached to the outcome, because when we're attached to the outcome, especially loved ones, we have a tendency to do the healing with an expectation attached to the healing. And then because we're connected to them and connected to the expectation of the healing working, the cord connecting the two of us, the energy, the prana, the healing prana flows back to us, right? So it's like, I really want this person to have their headache go away. So we heal, we remove the congestion, we supply the congested area or depleted area with fresh prana, fresh energy. And then we go, okay, I really hope this headache goes away. I really hope this headache goes away. And we're connected through the cord, right? And then the energy, the fresh prana that's supposed to accelerate the healing rate for the person, it flows back through the cord. That's why when you do blessing, you cut. When you do healing, you cut. You disconnect. It's not out of lack of compassion, or by disconnecting you're like, I don't love you and I don't care about you. It's because you want them to get the energy. So you've done the energy work, now you have to let go. You've done the energy work, now you have to let go. You've done the energy work, now you have to let go. So it goes to them versus coming back to you. So it's really up to you. The person can choose to suffer. The person can continue to choose to suffer because we have free will. So you have free will to get in your car and run over a child. You have free will to get in the car and buy a child an ice cream cone, right? You have the free will to do that. And there are consequences to those actions. That's why it benefits us so much to develop our awareness as quickly as humanly possible, because as we continue to expand and deepen our awareness, we go, that's it. That's why my life is suffering. Now I have to change it. But people continue to suffer day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out, lifetime in and lifetime out, because they lack the awareness as to the source and cause of their suffering. Not ultimately, but primarily ultimately, it's because of wrong viewpoint, right? And what's the most important viewpoint? I am the soul. That's the most important viewpoint. I am the soul. So be an example for people. They will follow your example over a period of time. So you can heal them at a distance. You can heal them without knowing. This is a thing that I've noticed people do. If you are a healer, whether it's pranic healing or something else, I've noticed people say to the person who's suffering, hey, just to let you know, I've been doing healing on you. That tends to have a backlash, because then the person puts up a psychological barrier to being healed, right? Just heal the person, heal them in silence. You don't need to tell them. Not necessary. Just do the healing. And again, the analogy we use is, well, what if the person doesn't want healing? Number one, the soul always wants healing. Number two, if they're karmically entitled not to be healed, you can do healing and they won't heal. They won't move forward. But you could be the only channel that is readily available to help them. So if not you, who? So does that mean you have to dedicate an hour every single day to healing this person who is resistant to being healed, resistant to moving their lives forward? No. You can heal them once a week, once a month. It depends on the severity of their condition. Also, pro tip, you might want to write this down. I don't talk about this, but it's coming now. So you can do healing. You can remove inner resistance to being healed. It's like someone drowning, right? They're drowning. We don't say, is it all right if I rescue you? You just reach into the water, you grab them out, put them in the boat, right? You don't need to ask their permission. If they're going to drown, they're going to drown, right? The person's supposed to drown. So we reach in and we can't grab them and they drown. Or we reach in, we put them on the boat, and then they die from all the water in their lungs and they can't breathe. So they were meant to die that way. That was their karma. But we did what we could out of compassion, not out of pride, but out of compassion. So when we tell people, just to let you know, I've been doing healing on you, it's out of pride, right? It's out of pride. Because in general, it wouldn't make somebody more receptive. It would make them most of the time more resistant. So just heal them quietly, right? The energy could be partially wasted. That's why we want to ensure people's receptivity. So you either heal them without them knowing while they're sleeping, right? Then you're really receptive, or you're really receptive, but you lack inner resistance. So you can do that. Or, right, you say, hey, are you open to being healed? You can ask them, right? If you've never had the conversation, are you open to being healed? Yeah, I'm open to being healed. Okay. Sit down, legs open, arms open, palms up, head down. That's the receptive pose. Then people are energetically more receptive to the healer. Also, have you noticed that people typically have to hit rock bottom or rock bottom before they're open and receptive to spirituality, energy healing, etc., right? Typically how it works. The soul's not learning the lesson of being open and receptive. So it's like, okay, the great teachers are going, all right, well, this soul has to learn this lesson because this is the agreement this soul had for this incarnation. All right, increase the intensity of the suffering. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, now they're ready. But you still have the choice. The intensity of the lesson is going up, or the intensity of the suffering to learn the lesson is going up, but the soul still can say, nope, I don't want to learn a lesson. Not interested. Not interested. In the soul could lose its life. People die all the time because of negative pride, right? Because of stupidness, because of ignorance, right? Stupidness is willful ignorance. It's purposely not doing the right thing, right? So we have free will, and the great teachers cannot take away our free will. Alice Bailey, if some of you remember, was asked to be a channel for the teachings of Holy Master DK. And she said, on one condition, that you don't take over my mind. That's a disciple that practices discernment. It's pretty high level discernment to tell a holy master, I'll do your work on one condition. And that's why they chose her. One of the reasons, I'm sure, right? So people have free will to suffer. People have free will to move forward. We can do our small part in helping them quietly and then monitor the person. Hey, I've been doing healing on this person, for a half hour every week and they're improving. What if I did 2 healings every week? Oh, they're improving. Or I've done 1 healing this week, nothing's happened. I did another healing next week or a couple days later, nothing's happened. I've done it. Then maybe you can go, I'm going to leave it over to the great ones. I tried, the feedback was no change or things got worse. And certain people will get worse if you do healing on them. That's a whole other conversation outside of today's Q&A. Next question. How long should I work on or heal a limiting belief or negative tendency before moving on to another one? Awesome question. Again, how long should I work on or heal a limiting belief or negative tendency before moving on to another one? So this is connected to character building. In general, you work on a limiting belief for 90 days. In general, you work on a limiting belief for 90 days. So you identify what the limiting belief is. You do the whiteboard technique, which is in the Pranic Psychotherapy book by Grandmaster Choa Koksui, or you do inner reflection and firm resolution, which is taught in Arhatic Yoga, and you do the blue triangle technique, which is taught in Kriya Shakti and Arhatic Yoga, and you work on it every single day for about 20 minutes. So 15 minutes of doing your inner reflection and firm resolution or whiteboard technique, and then 5 minutes doing the blue triangle technique. And you do that every single day, rain, sleet, or shine, regardless of the feedback that you're getting. Not regardless, because you still want to practice awareness and understanding, which will come as you continue to purify. But all of these things come off in layers. So you can work on loving kindness and non-injury every single day for hours on end for the next year, and there will still be lack of loving kindness. There will still be mental injury, verbal injury, and physical injury. Maybe not physical injury, but the other injuries will be there. Because to have mastered loving kindness and non-injury, we're talking on saint level. And I don't know about you, but still far away from being a saint. So in general, if you notice you have a limiting belief or negative tendency, some kind of addiction, drug addiction, sex addiction, alcohol addiction, food addiction, shopping addiction, some kind of addiction, or you have low self-esteem or low self-worth or anger issues or mismanagement of money or depression or low self-esteem, whatever you're suffering from, you want to practice 15 minutes of the whiteboard technique or inner reflection, firm resolution, and then at least one blue triangle technique, which we can't go into in this, on that thing. So you're looking at about 20 minutes of inner work every single day on that for 3 months. And then afterwards, you move on. You find another limiting belief that you want to work on. Now, are there ways to speed up that process? Yes. Do I recommend it for most people? No. Because inner reflection and firm resolution and blue triangle technique uses up a lot of energy. It consumes a lot of energy. So if you're not doing high level meditation practices to replace the energy that you're removing, you will have a tendency to be very depleted. So you can speed up that process, but you also have to make other adjustments along the way, which require better awareness, better understanding. Hopefully, you're under the guidance of a qualified instructor, right? You can speed it up. I remember asking in Kriya Shakti, there was a certain technique, and I asked, well, what if you do the technique this many times per day? Is that okay? And so he's looking at the room energetically, and he's looking at me, and he's looking at the energy of what I'm doing. And he goes, he doesn't want to say no to me, but he also doesn't want to say yes to the group. So I'm trying to remember how he worded it. It was actually very well said. And it was kind of like the nod, like, I wouldn't recommend it for most people so far. Keep doing it, but it comes at a cost, right? There are pros and cons, the costs and cost analysis, cost benefit analysis. You gotta determine what's right for you, right? Again, going back to the previous question, you have free will. You can do or not do. It's entirely up to you. That's actually one of the beautiful aspects of recognizing who and what you are as a soul, a being of light, love, and power, or will. So you, as a being of will, can will yourself to do or not do. Next question. What should I do if my loved one doesn't believe in God? They don't believe in God. Going back to the example of being an example. So if your goal is to quote unquote convert somebody, which I've always been fascinated by this because I've seen it for at least 25 years. And to this day, I don't get it. It's like people that do preaching, right? Preaching the gospel on the streets, and they are screaming and yelling and doing the fire and brimstone speech that if you don't believe in God or you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. If you don't repent, you're going to hell. If you're homosexual, you're going to hell, right? The fundamentalist fanatical viewpoint within Christianity. And I've always been fascinated that if the goal is to convert, right, then wouldn't you appeal to people's intelligence? Wouldn't you appeal to their good senses versus trying to appeal to them out of fear and control and manipulation? But they're saying save the soul at any means necessary. That's why, hundreds of years ago, they would torture you to death to get you to convert, because they're like, we're not here to take care of your body. We're here to save your soul. So if you die in the process of getting your salvation, so be it. At least you won't be burning in hell for eternity, right? But I've never been a big fan of the fear approach. So it's this. I'm more of a fan of being an example, right? So when you're a loving Christian, and people get to know you and they find out through the grapevine or on a intimate conversation that you're a Christian, the likelihood of them following Christ is much greater than if you're screaming and yelling and belittling them or causing them to have fear. Same way with if you're a good Buddhist, people go, I wonder what this person knows that I don't know. Being a good healer, being a good, even being a good atheist, right? So what's the fundamental? Being a good person, which is connected to what? The virtues, which is connected to what? The qualities of the soul, which is connected to what? God. So you don't have to believe in God. How many people say they believe in God but are horrible to others? Right? How many people, I've met many of them, say they believe in God, believe in Jesus, and are horrible to people, are abusive to people, are violent towards people in their all of it, their thoughts, their speech, their actions, right? But how many people do you know that are atheist who quote unquote don't believe in God but practice good character? Who would you prefer to be around? There's a person that I've been spending time with here, a traveler from Israel, and he to quote him, he says, "I'm the least spiritual person you'll ever meet." I was like, "Oh, sweet. You're an atheist." He goes, "No, I'm more of a pantheist, which is the belief of God is nature. God is a collection of natural laws that were set into place, and then God, quote unquote, removed him or herself. So there's no God that watches each and every one of us along our path to guide us to do or to not do. It's more of like the laws were set into motion, the beginning of time, and then that's it." So that's his belief system, or that's the belief system he most resonates with. So in that process, was I trying to convince him otherwise? Was I trying to debate him? Was I trying to make him wrong and make myself right? Not at all. I was like, great, man, awesome. Which created what? Space for him to continue opening up, sharing more. I was learning things from him. I was learning things about his viewpoint, why he thought what he thought, what his life experience has been around spirituality, around spiritual people, around being hurt, being taken advantage of. I saw some of his naivety as to why he thinks what he thinks about certain things from his life experience that I wouldn't have been privy to if I just immediately got into a debate with him and immediately tried to make him wrong and make myself right. It's not good people skills. I still don't know why people are like that. My tendency, because I've developed that so often, is when I know someone's not open or receptive, I stop talking. Maybe not the best approach. I'm always ready, willing, and able to talk, to discuss, to clarify something in the moment, an exchange with somebody. But as soon as I see that they're not getting it, or I see it's just going to lead down a circular argument, I just withdraw myself because I don't want to force somebody into believing what I believe or seeing things from my viewpoint. If someone's open and receptive all day long, we'll talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to get understanding, right? Which leads to compassion, greater love, greater patience, tolerance. No understanding, no love, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say. So, if your loved one doesn't believe in God, it's okay. Look at their virtue. You don't have to believe in God, quote unquote, to be a good person. Just look at, is the person a good person? Now, does believing in a God in the sense of having a spiritual practice will you directly plug into and expand that connection to God? Is that beneficial? Is that helpful? Does that accelerate everything? Yes. Would I recommend that? Absolutely. Don't force people to believe in anything. It's not worth it. You notice it always backfires without exception. When you force people to do something, it always backfires because it's the energy you're pushing into them, so the energy comes back to you is multiplied many, many times, right? You can push with love, but it has to be love, not manipulation, not yeah, you guys get it. Um that's a good question. I don't really know how to answer this question. What has COVID taught you so far? What has COVID taught me so far? I could probably talk about this for a long time. That would be way longer than our recorded time here for the Q&A. COVID initially brought up my awareness of control because I felt out of control and disempowered most of my life since a teeny tiny 4, 5, 6 year old. So I've had a chip on my shoulder my entire life, literally my entire life. I can't remember a time that I've been able to put my feet up, relax, and just go with the flow per se. I'm always thinking I have to defend something, I have to push something, I have to justify something, I have to validate something. Um, and not even to any one specific human being, but to life itself. Like I have to validate my existence to life itself. So I've always had that chip on my shoulder. So when COVID came around and we were doing the 9-day Hatha Yoga retreat in 2020 in Bovina, New York, I was the only person of the retreat of 25 people that was given the permission to fly. Everyone else had to drive to the retreat, even if they were 2,000 miles away. I was the only person in the entire retreat that was given the permission by the masters to fly in, which I was grateful for. And that's when flying was squirrely. The planes were basically empty at that time that I was flying, because it was only a few months afterwards that they started going, hey, let's open up, let's allow people to fly again. So airplane tickets were super cheap. Nobody was on the plane. It was probably me and 8 other people on a full plane, like a major plane. So that was such a weird time. So anyways, we were given permission. Everything was strict. They made the retreat size 1/3 the size that normally is. Normally a 9-day retreat is about 75 or more people. This particular year it was 25 people. Everyone except for me had to drive in, and then we all had to wear face shields and mask for the first 3 or 4 days. And then because they want to check everyone's symptoms, does this person have a cough? Does this person have a runny nose? Does this person have a fever? Does this person have COVID? Is it just a normal flu? Is it just the person's tired? Right. So the masters want to monitor what everyone's doing. So we had to sit at least 6 feet apart from one another. But basically, from me getting my foot in the door, I was rebelling. I wouldn't wear my mask. I wouldn't wear my face shield. If I had my face shield on, it was completely up, not down. And then we all went up to the gazebo in the middle of the property, and we kind of had a heart to heart with the group. It wasn't like we were all being confronted, or why aren't you wearing your face shield, or why aren't you wearing your mask and your face shield, and why aren't you doing? It wasn't like that. It was opening up the conversation for COVID. And as one of the masters says, COVID has been a teacher. And I thought he meant literally, like COVID is a teacher in the inner world. I misunderstood, meant that COVID is teaching us lessons about many, many, many different things. And so the question was, well, what has COVID taught you? And it was, I remember that very clearly. And I said, well, COVID pisses me off because it's about control, and it's about people trying to control me, right? And I'm making it about me instead of about the collective, about the doing it for other people, I was like, they're doing it against me. And so the master was talking about that, and he knows my backstory, and he could see the energy, and he goes, okay. So that's something you need to work on. And I was like, great, one more thing I need to work on. And then the person right next to me, ironically enough, had the exact opposite. And he also asked me, he goes, if you don't like to be controlled, why are you putting your face mask on? Why don't you just walk into the grocery store or to the restaurant with no face mask on? And I said, because I don't want somebody to confront me in the grocery store or at the restaurant, and then I have to confront them back in a very aggressive way because the chip on my shoulder, and then have that get filmed on an iPhone and then uploaded to some channel on YouTube. And then those people find out that, I'm a professional healer that represents Grandmaster Chokokusui's pranic healing. And then that has a bad image for pranic healing. So I explained that to him, and he says, it's a very interesting viewpoint. He says, you're afraid of the stick of the teacher? And I said, I guess. And it was like one of those, like, I got to ponder this for a minute. Because if our teacher, at the lineage that we're part of, the lineage of compassion and mercy, the teacher doesn't have to hit me with a stick. The teacher is the compassionate aspect of learning, not the severity aspect of learning, like the lords of karma, right? The lords of karma are the ones holding the stick. The teacher is not holding the stick, right? So my viewpoint was distorted and wrong on several levels. But the person next to me, who wore her mask all the time, she was doing the opposite, but she was also coming from a place of control, that she wanted to control and influence other people to wear their mask. So it was both about, I didn't want to be controlled, and she wanted to control others to wear their mask. So either way, there's conflict. Either way, there's severity between our viewpoints. So we weren't able to meet in the middle. And then, funny enough, days later, shields came off, masks came off, because nobody was showing any signs of having COVID or what have you, right? Very, very interesting. It was the strangest. Again, I've been to 55 plus retreats over the past 22 years, and it was the strangest retreat I'd ever been to. COVID was just one factor that made a retreat strange. Mask, shields, 6 feet, sitting distance from everyone, no hugs, no kisses, no affection, right? It was very, very strange. Very, very strange. So it taught me to let go of control to a degree. I'm still working on it, because I came into this incarnation with a chip on my shoulder. So I made the chip smaller. It's not a redwood tree on my shoulder anymore. It's maybe more like a redwood sapling or something, right? But again, these are things that we come in with. We come in with programming, we come in with tendencies, we come in with our previous incarnation, we come in with our weaknesses, our ninja powers, and then we have to kind of figure things out. It's interesting. One of the master pranic healers says, in general, we're always rebuilding our spiritual path. We're always rebuilding our spiritual path, which is the antakarana, the spiritual bridge. Every lifetime we're rebuilding it, but the more advanced we are, the faster we rebuild that bridge. That's why the advanced souls that are young get on the spiritual path earlier than later, right? Some souls get on the spiritual path in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Those are typically younger souls, versus the souls that get on the path in their teens or 20s, right? So we're rebuilding our path every lifetime. The more advanced we are, we start rebuilding that path much, much earlier by practicing the virtues, by doing spiritual practices, yoga, meditation, healing, etc. Next question. If the parent is developed, does that mean the child will be developed? Not necessarily. And I don't understand that fully. I don't understand that fully. So meaning Lord Jesus has a child and it's not necessarily going to be another Lord Jesus. Grandmaster Cho Koksui has 4 kids, and by I think his own, if I'm not mistaken, by his own acknowledgement, they are not Grandmaster Cho Koksuis, right? They have a level of development, but they're not the teacher. And they're not in the ballpark of the teacher, as I understand it. So the goal, Grandmaster Cho Koksui's 150-year vision, was to create 2 to 3 holy masters on this planet within 150 years. How? By having pranic healers marry each other, or arhatic yogis marry each other, have children, have them become practitioners, and then as advanced people come together and have purified the vessel. I feel like I'm like a little bit all over the place here. Advanced souls have to have a certain instrument to incarnate through. So if the instruments, the mother and the father, are clean and purified and they come together, that higher soul, the higher soul of that being, can then incarnate through a vessel that can handle it, right? There are, as I understand it, there are many very advanced souls around planet Earth that cannot incarnate because the material, as it were, is not purified enough and developed enough to withstand that soul incarnating. So that's the 150-year vision of Master Choa, that you have pranic healers having kids, you have arhatic yogis having kids, and then their practitioners, they meet other practitioners and have kids, and you go down this lineage of cleaner, more powerful physical vehicles offering themselves to more advanced souls to go into that cleaner, stronger, more capable vehicle, right? And through that process of advanced souls having advanced souls, the likelihood of a holy master or 2 holy masters materializing from that is greater. Now, are there unknown factors? Is truth dynamic? Is karma dynamic? Yes. Right? But knowing what we know, that's the plan over 150 years. And as there are more globally advanced people, meaning as there are more yoga practitioners, healing practitioners, meditation practitioners, the world will be cleaner and more purified, cleaner and more purified, cleaner and more purified. So the vessels are going to be cleaner, more purified, and more able to handle very advanced souls incarnating. Right? Does that make sense? So that's the 150-year vision of Grandmaster Cho Koksui that is talked about in greater detail, a few more sentences, in the book Modern Origins of Pranic Healing and Arhatic Yoga. Next question. I believe in universal truth, but I don't practice it all the time. Why? I believe in universal truth, but I don't practice it all the time. Why? This kind of reminds me of a quote, or not a quote, an example of one of my clients was talking about tithing. And I gave her clear instructions on, okay, if you want your business to be successful, you have to tithe this amount of income for your business. We'll decree it, meaning we'll speed up the energy materialization for your business to be successful. And she hasn't done it yet. And it's been months and she hasn't done it yet. And I said, do you believe tithing works? Yes. I said, do you believe tithing is a universal truth? Yes. And I said, no, you don't. She goes, what do you mean? I said, you don't. How do I know? Because I'm looking at your actions. Your actions tell me. As one of the masters has says, realization is when your insight is in alignment with your new actions, right? So you have an insight about something. It's only a realization when you're taking different actions in your life. If your insight is such, but your actions are the same, it's not a realization. So you're still at the same level of awareness, the same level of your consciousness. So, what can prevent somebody from practicing a universal truth that they quote unquote know to be true? Well, negative pride, doubt, fear, lack of understanding. That's a big one. Lack of understanding. Because if she truly understood tithing, she would do it immediately. But she doesn't understand tithing, right? So, what gives certainty? Clarity. So, when you understand something, right, when you have clarity, you have certainty, which then, when you have certainty, you take action. If you lack certainty, you hesitate, you don't take action. And I can look at my life in many examples that when I lack clarity, I didn't do anything. When I lacked clarity, I was like, ugh. So somewhere in her thinking, there's lack of clarity, lack of understanding, which is giving her the uncertainty that, should I do this now? Should I do this in a month? Should I do this in 6 months? Should I do this when I have more money? Should I do this when this and this and this and this happens, right? But she's not understanding. If she understood tithing, she would do it, right? So, so those are some of the reasons as to why we don't practice what we know, because we lack understanding, we lack clarity, we lack certainty, we have fear, we have doubt, we have negative pride, not following simple instructions, right? Not if, and here's the thing, you go, well, I'm not going to just follow instructions blindly. Okay, then ask questions. Seek to understand rather than being understood, because that's a cop out for a lot of people. It's like Master Choa says at all the end of all the sutra books, did I say something? And then partly throughout, follow simple instructions. And people go, oh, so you just want me to follow things blindly? No, the teacher has never said follow things blindly. The teacher says you can ask as many questions as you want as long as you ask politely. That's it. But people will go, well, he just wants me to give money to him. Is that what he's saying? Or is that your interpretation and perception of what he's saying? Right? So again, it goes back to negative pride, because out of negative pride, we make assumptions. Out of negative pride, we don't follow simple instructions because we think we know better. Well, if we knew better, then our situation wouldn't be what it is. Right? If I knew, if I had understanding and certainty about physical fitness and well-being, I wouldn't be overweight with high blood pressure and high cholesterol, right? If I knew about healthy relationships and harmonious relationships and loving relationships, then I wouldn't be in dysfunctional, unhealthy, disharmonious relationships, right? I would be a product of my product. But because of negative pride, we make assumptions, we think we know better, we have calcified viewpoints and ideals and ideas. So those are some of the reasons as to why. So what must we do to start practicing universal truths? Is number one, we have to understand it. We have to experiment, and we have to get feedback. And then what that does is it builds our practical understanding, which is what this group is all about. We're like, oh, that's okay. Got it. So many people know throat chakra, so many things, but have very little understanding and even less practical application. Yeah, I know Twin Hearts is great. How many times do you practice it? 5 times? And what, over the past year? Oh, yeah, you can heal people through energy. How many times have you done healing? Twice, right? Yeah, tithing works. 100% tithing works. How much did you give last month? I didn't give anything. So you don't know that then. right? A lot of people on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, what have you, they're most all speaking from theory. Not everybody, but most are speaking from theory. I remember when I moved to Denver with the person that I moved to Denver with, and actually this happened several times, that people that I knew very close to me who had very chaotic lives, that had very little inner peace and had rarely ever meditated once or twice, and then they started teaching meditation to other people. Not like a meditation that is systemized like Twin Hearts, right? You don't have to be a master Twin Hearts practitioner to teach people Twin Hearts, right? But their own form of meditation, which to me at the time and now is mind-boggling. I'm like, your life is in chaos. You're not a product of the product. You're not an example of what you're trying to get other people to experience. But how do you know that what you're teaching them, what you've made up, what you pulled from the inner world is helpful to them? Right? So that's an example of negative pride, because they don't feel good enough. They feel like they're coming from low self-esteem, so they have to come across as the expert versus coming across as, I don't know what I'm talking about. And not once did I ever hear that from these people that I have in mind. Bizarre to me, super strange. It's like a person. It's like a person investing in the stock market once and losing most all of their money, then putting together a course of how to invest and succeed in the stock market. Like, for those of you who've been on my website, christianarlong.com, you'll see that I have six-figure healer program. Well, I've made six figures as a energy healer, and I wouldn't put that program together until I made six figures as an energy healer, right? Because I want to be an embodiment of what I was teaching and sharing. And funny enough, I actually had my brother years ago contact me. He goes, what's this six-figure healer thing? You haven't made six figures as a healer. I said, yeah, I have. He's like, I didn't know that. Right? So again, it's not judging these people from an emotional standpoint or a criticizing standpoint. It's judging them as in discernment, going, who are you getting your advice from? Who are you getting your counsel from? Who are you getting your pearls of wisdom from? Is it from people that are an embodiment of that, or it's from people that are a facade of that? Because if you learn from those people, there's not a lot of Shakti or power of truth passing through them, because they're not an embodiment of that, right? So if I'm not a millionaire, I don't have a right to be teaching people how to be millionaires, because I'm not an embodiment of that energy, right? If I haven't been through the dark night of the soul, I can't guide another human being through the dark night of the soul. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I think you guys get it. Next question. Really running over. Is there a way to energetically shield myself while sleeping? One of the best ways to do that, you can do Twin Hearts before bed, and or you can have silk sheets, silk bed sheets, silk blanket, silk pillows. That's a way of shielding yourself energetically while you sleep. They're more expensive. For a good set of silk sheets and silk linen, you're going to spend about $400. But if I'm not mistaken, it's better energetically, and it lasts longer physically, and I believe about 4 times longer than like say cotton or linen sheets, and it has the shielding effect. Next question. What are the effects of meditating too much? You become a space cadet. If you meditate too much, if you're constantly going to the higher soul, constantly activating the crown, and you're not balancing that out with living in the world, which someone very close to me has problems with, you're going to be like a space cadet. You'll be able to access higher intuition, but you won't necessarily be able to ground the energy of the intuition. What's intuition? Intuition is the processed raw data of your life experiences, right? So you interact with the world, your chakra and aura picking up energy, it's raw data, and then it sends it up to the higher soul. The higher soul processes it and then sends it down in the form of intuition. You're like, aha, that's the job I'm supposed to go for. That's the relationship I'm supposed to go for. That's the career, that's the career path I'm supposed to take. That's the spiritual school I'm supposed to join. That's the right. But if you're constantly up there and you're not acting in the physical world, you're not grounding the intuition, you're just going to be a space cadet all the time. So what are the effects of meditating too much? You're not grounded. You're not grounded. You're not grounded. You're impractical. So you have all these high ideals, but you never anchor those high ideals into reality, which that was my case for 10 years. Big upper chakras, teeny tiny depleted lower chakras. So I was like an inverted pyramid. Woo! Leaving my body, high level experiences. Yay! I can't pay rent this month. Right? I can't earn a living. I can't concretize anything. But I have these great high level meditation experiences. Woo! Right? My mentor years and years and years ago, when I was living in Florida, he was laughing at me after a Twin Hearts meditation at his place. I said, "What are you laughing at?" And I knew he was looking at me clairvoyantly. I said, "Why are you laughing at me? And what are you looking at?" And he goes, "You're never in your body." I'm like, "What do you mean I'm never in my body?" He goes, "Your consciousness hovers about 6 feet above your head." I was like, sweet. And you know how we practice, we test people's groundedness in pranic healing. We have them stand and we push on the side of their shoulder like that. And if you're not grounded, you just fluff away like woo. If you're grounded and somebody pushes on your shoulder, you're like a rooted tree. You don't move at all. It took me years, literally a decade, a little bit more than a decade, to be that person. Right? Now when people push on me, it's like they get rooted pushing on me. But that was not even remotely easy. So people that are naturally grounded, I have a lot of admiration for them. I was like, wow, what's it like to be grounded? That's pretty sweet. But then I also know people who are way more ungrounded than I am and who can go way higher than I can in the inner world, but they can't ground themselves. And then there are people who can do both. Master Cho was one of those people. He could be really high up there and really connected and rooted and practical simultaneously. That's what made him a great teacher. One of the things that made him a great teacher. That's why he was a great businessman and a great spiritual teacher. He was rooted to the earth and rooted to God. He was the living, breathing tree of life. Also, the other effects of meditating too much: Kundalini syndrome, insomnia, overheating, irritability, financial challenges, clairvoyance that you can't turn off, clairsentience you can't turn off, clairaudience that you can't turn off. So there are a lot of negative things that happen. Knowing what I know now about meditation and the experiences I've had with over meditating in my earlier years as a TM practitioner and a TM Siddha practitioner, and as an Arhatic yogi and as a more advanced Arhatic yogi, I can imagine doing the same intensity with my current meditations as I would have done, say, 15 years ago. Couldn't imagine. My life would be in complete and utter disarray if I took the same approach to those meditations as to my current meditations. So it's not beneficial to meditate too much. You can meditate more, but you have to have awareness, understanding, balancing it out, and a qualified instructor helping you if you want to meditate more. And then last question, do you need a healing crystal to heal others? So you guys know that we use healing crystals in pranic healing. We have laser crystals, disintegrator crystals, extractor crystals. We have pendants. So this would be a laser crystal, right? It has gold at the bottom. So the energy flows faster through the crystal, right? This is a laser crystal. So do you need crystals to heal? No. Do people become too reliant on their crystals? Yes. My first 12 years in pranic healing, I didn't have a crystal. And I may have used a crystal a few times in classes. That's it. So for 12 years, I would just use my hand. I wasn't as sensitive the way I am now, thankfully. So yeah, I could work on somebody, still not cut cords properly, still not clean my hand properly with the spray or throwing it into the salt water. I wouldn't be, at least I wouldn't psychologically be as affected or theoretically as affected. But yeah, you don't need a crystal to do healing. Healing crystals are tools that leverage your efforts, that make it faster and easier. But I know people, healers, who won't heal people if they don't have a crystal, which is not the right approach, which is not the compassionate thing to do. Right? So if somebody's suffering from a headache and you're like, have the training and the know-how to help them, and you're like, I don't have my crystal. I'm sorry. Get back to you later. Not good. That actually generates some not so good karma for you. Okay, so you don't need a healing crystal to heal people. You don't need a healing crystal to help people. The same thing is, I've heard this many, many times from people. They take basic pranic healing and they go, I don't feel competent enough to do healing. I'm going to take advanced pranic healing. Or they say, I don't feel competent enough in basic pranic healing, so I'm going to wait before I take advanced pranic healing. So they're not healing, and then they're waiting to retake basic before they start healing or before they take advanced. Doesn't make sense, right? It's not very clear. So people go, well, I need to take basic, advanced, psychotherapy, and crystal before I can start healing people. It's like, nope. Your first day of basic, you can start healing people distantly. You can start healing yourself. You can start healing yourself, right? You can heal loved ones, friends, family members. Practice scanning, manipulating energy, scanning trees, bushes, flowers, animals, right? Experiment instead of like having the perfectionistic mindset that I have to have all the tools and all the knowledge before I do anything. It's not the right viewpoint. So you don't need a healing crystal to heal. You don't need to take all the classes to heal. You can start healing day one. That's the whole purpose. Get you healing people as quickly as possible, which as you heal people, you're generating good karma. As you heal people, more energy is coming to you. As you heal people, more intuition is coming to you from the higher soul, guiding you on your path, whether your path is to be a healer or not, but you're still getting fed because you're being an instrument of goodwill and the will to the good. You're expanding your antakarana. You're getting more support. You're getting more guidance. You're getting more energy. You're getting more good karma. So it's a no-brainer, right? So don't let the fear or the comfort zone or the sense of inadequacy get in your way of doing the right thing. Okay. So we covered a lot. Good Lord, we ran over hardcore again, but we want to do it a little bit earlier today so you guys have it. Any questions, let me know. Continue submitting your questions for the Q&As at christianrlong@gmail, my email, or on Facebook Messenger at christianrlong, okay? And I appreciate you guys very much for joining and asking your questions. And before we end, let's close. It's not the same thing. Place your hands on your heart. Be aware of your heart. Be aware of your crown. Be aware of your heart and your crown together. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, respected and beloved teacher, Grandmaster Cho Koksui, Lord Mahaguru Jame to Lord Buddha Kuan Yin, to Sarasvati, to Lord Ganesh, to Holy Master Count Saint Germain, to all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, healing ministers, to our divine selves or higher souls. We thank you all for your great blessings, for your soothing, healing energies, for your inner and outer transformation. We thank you. In full faith, so be it. Thank you. Whew. It's a lot of energy, guys. I'm glad I can share it with you, and we can all share it together. And on that note, have an amazing, phenomenal day, week, and life. This is Christian Long, Life Enhancement Consultant. Talk to you soon. Bye.